Welcome to the Finance Committee meeting of October 7th. We have 6 articles that we voted, recommendation at town meeting, and tonight's agenda is to review and possibly change those to possible favorable, unfavorable, or refer back. So we do have a lot of people in the audience. If you wouldn't mind, if you're here in support of a particular article, please give us your name and which article you're here for, starting on the end.
Briar Hasselmeyer, Article 12.
Thank you.
Aaron Hasselmeyer, Article 12.
Dina Horn, Article 12.
Mario Corso, Article 12.
First name again, please.
Mario.
Thank you.
David Blasich, Article 12.
Glenn Maffey, Sewer and Water Commission.
Bill Abbott, Sewer and Water Commission.
Bernie Marshall, Water and Sewer Superintendent. Joe Moriarty, Article 12.
And Bailey Fire Chief.
Mike Farley, Article 12.
Yasmin Hurley, Article 12.
Jim Hurley, Article 12.
Marion Stanton, Article 12.
Jim Howley, Article 12.
First up is Article 12.
Well, I believe the Finance Committee received my memo I sent out last week. Commissioner Chairman Abbott is right next to me here. Sewer and Water Commissioners authorized me in executive session to go up to 150 on that property. I've been advised by Mr. and Mrs. Hassenjäger that the lowest they're willing to go is 379. I believe the commissioners are meeting on the 10th to discuss this. Is that correct, Bill?
That is correct, and we've just checked with Darren and Breyer and told them to please come, and so they will be attending also. Our intent is at that point to take a vote, our official position, because we've been in the negotiating between, and now we'll get to the point where we have to make a decision, because it's not a question of whether we're always interested in acquiring the land, it's a question of the price, really.
Jim, did you get feedback on the appraisals?
Yes, we have received feedback on the appraisal. It's been completed. It is part of an executive session document right now.
Okay.
So it's not a public record, but I can tell you that I think the commissioners will be fine with me telling you that the low came in at about $39,000, and the high came in at about $400,000.
Christ.
But again, that's not going to be a public record until after town meeting.
Right.
So.
I think the one was just the parcel.
Right.
The other one is with access,
Maximum use.
which depends on another lot that,
Right.
so.
Any interest in debating this one, or do we want to hold off and do a meeting right before town meeting after sewer and water votes next week? Andrew?
I would prefer definitely to hold off until after sewer and water votes next week. However, I do have a few kind of clarifying questions that I'm sure the sewer and water commissioners are probably thinking of asking anyway, but we might as well hear them out now. I don't know if others do.
Go ahead.
So my first question is for the petitioners. You sent out a document today, and there was an interesting attachment at the end about this grant program through the state. And I guess my question is, I haven't had a chance to learn more about it, and maybe, Bill, you can elucidate this too. Is there any way that we can apply for this grant program, get accepted before the town were to purchase the land?
Now, the deadline to file the application, and this is an ongoing program that they've had year after year, is, I believe it was November 19th for this year's. The actual award is made in April. I don't have the particular date, but if you look at the prior years, it's always in April that they say, here's the winners, here's the amounts that they have. There's generally been a maximum amount for any one parcel, and I think one year it was $350,000, another year it was $300,000. I haven't seen what the actual number is this year. Just looking at the number of awards in the past has been 5, maybe 6 parcels, and if you total them all up, it usually comes just under $1 million, maybe just a little bit over. So I've never seen where the actual amount that's been authorized by the legislature for the grant, but based on what you see looking back, 2 and 3 years, it's probably been around $1 million. So it's not like it looks like they gave out as much as they could, and that the next one that didn't make it probably put them over the limit. It is a competitive grant. There's a number of questions they ask. I think that we would do fairly well. Some of them are geared towards giving extra points for communities that are lower income, which obviously Walpole wouldn't do that. But I think that looking at the other things, we have low unaccounted for water, we got management acts, all the other things that they'd like. The other thing is they would want an appraisal of the parcel that you're buying. And that's been one of the issues. If you look at, say, the low number, 39,000, that's, I think, is what they would say, and you would take up to 50% of that number. I don't think they would take the larger number. That's because we've had, the first offer that we had a number of years ago was for 800 and something, and okay, it's only going to cost you 400 because of the 50%, but then when you start to look at the program, you go, it's not going to be that easy, so.
I think part of Andrew's question, though, was, does the town have to actually have a purchase and
Oh.
sale to apply for the grant, or do we have to appropriate our portion?
I knew
in
there was
hopes of
one
the
other
grant?
item.
Yeah.
One, you have to have the authorization to buy the part.
Okay.
You cannot buy it, though.
Okay,
If you buy it, then they said, we obviously didn't need any help.
right.
So that's the deal, that if the town meeting authorizes it, we wouldn't be able to exercise it one way or the other until, mid-April. And I don't know how that would affect.
So if we had a motion that was to authorize sewer and water commissioners to spend up to $150,000 for a purchase of land, plus any funds received through a grant program to make the purchase work, that could be a legitimate motion.
I believe so. One of the things, and this would be a question that Briar or Darren would have to know, they have what's been labeled an attractive offer by another developer. That may be contingent on having everything signed and sealed by November 15th, which was one of the things originally, I think, when the 400, everything had to be complete by a certain date. We could not do that and still apply for the grant.
But I want to echo your question. That is exactly my follow-up, is if there was a motion that we could construct that said, the sewer and water commissioners are willing to offer this much money, but if we apply to the state program and on net was that, could this work? So again, we'll hear more about that. But I had a different question about a different document the petitioner submitted, which was this IEP School Meadowbrook Aquifer Protection Study from September 1983. And it's pretty remarkable because it does say pretty clearly that the following land parcels are recommended in order of priority, and number 1 is parcel north of well number 5 and south of Common Street.
Right.
And so we only have one page of this report, and I'm just
Okay.
wondering if you have any. I know it's 1983 and things
Yeah.
have changed since then. I don't know if Darwin Lane, those homes were even built
They
around
weren't.
that time. They weren't.
No.
And so south of Common Street, were they referring to a larger parcel than this parcel exactly that's being mentioned? So those are my questions about that report.
Yeah, when Washington Well Number 5 was actually installed, the actual well, I believe in 1982, we did not put it online until 1986. We had to acquire a very restrictive easement on, I think it's 1300 Washington Street, that they can't do anything in the section of their backyard. We also acquired actually a part of this parcel. We had to get the 400-foot radius. At the time when it was installed, we also had installed Washington Number 6. At the time when they were initially developed, it looked like that these were sister wells. They were going to both be very good wells. In practice, it's turned out that Washington 6 is a super well. and Washington 5 is just sort of an average. And I looked at the statistical report for the annual statistical report that we have to file with the state for the year 2018, last year's, and Washington 6 produced on average in a month 23 million gallons a day. Washington 5 is 6.3 million, so it's like basically 4 times the, and that Washington 5 basically fits in with the other well sites that we have. We have one super one, and then the others sort of are, they're all important. I mean, when we lost Washington number 4, we basically had to say no outside watering until we got that fixed, so. But that was one of the points that was brought up, and the explanation as to why it might have been thought to be an extremely good well. In fact, in reality, it turned out not to be as, again, it's an important one, but it's not at the Washington 6 level.
And then finally, one of my points of commentary, it's not a question, and we can discuss this, is I was curious whether, because the alternative here that the petitioners have mentioned is potentially taking the offer from a developer
Right.
and doing a 40B project. And there's broader discussion about 40Bs and affordable housing that we may get to tonight, maybe not. But my understanding is, once we get to 10% or we get safe harbor, then we can deny 40Bs. And a lot of individuals have mentioned, well, we have this big Summer Street project that's 300 units. Because they applied first and they're earlier in the queue, would this kind of forestall or block any future 40Bs? And so I reached out to the state, I think it was Department of Housing and Community Development, one of the experts we worked on with the housing production plan that kind of knows the SHI, the subsidized housing inventory, how we account for how many affordable homes we have, Philip DiMartino, and he explained to me that until the ZBA, the Zoning Board of Appeals, fully approves the Summer Street project, and it could be many months, that any 40B that applies until that ZBA approval of the project is done would still count, because those units, the 300 units from Summer Street, would not give us safe harbor until the ZBA is done. So that's my understanding from the state, and I just wanted to offer that because that's an important contingency here, because if the alternative is a 40B development that has all these impervious services that you educated us about before, then that, is a discussion point for well number 5.
Other questions?
Question, getting to that, Andrew, with regards to counting those units in the 40B, is it the zoning board of appeals approves the project and then they count, or do they actually have to be constructed and basically rented out or sold before they'll actually count as part of the inventory?
I think it's the zoning board signing off on the permit. So once the
Then those
permit
units
becomes,
count.
once the permit becomes approved, then they are basically a project in the works, and they would count and then block any units that apply after that.
That's right, that's the understanding from the
Yeah.
state.
That's what it's been.
I'd like just to ask a question, just curious on the 40B. This 300 one is in the process, just started, so they're going to have to wait till they go to the ZBA. If a 40B was proposed for this parcel at the end of Darren Lane, they could get in there because the ZBA hasn't given, but suppose the Darren Lane one is a simple one, and the ZBA can say, done, and yet the 300 one is more complicated. Does one jump ahead of the other? I'm just curious. If it's not relevant, you can tell me it's not relevant. It just, when
I'm not that.
Andrew
detailed
was
on it.
explaining it, that popped in my mind. That's,
I don't know, that's a great question.
yeah. Sorry, I'll try and
Maybe-
avoid
maybe
asking questions.
Andre-
I'll just
I
answer.
think
I
once
wondered that
once the
too.
permit is applied for, they're in the queue. So if their project jumps in, they would block anything that hasn't had a permit requested.
Right.
So anything that's in the queue is still in the queue, but once their project gets approved, that starts anything submitted after that as being, you've got to wait for whatever the state says is the appropriate time based on their housing.
Yeah.
So if they bring in 100 affordable units, we might get a 1-year grace period. Okay, and then so whoever's comes in after their project gets approved, they've got to wait the 1 year. But the other project in South Street, they're already in the queue, and their 300 would come online, and as long as their 300 came in before somebody else applied in that 1-year grace period, then we could bump it 2 years from the South Street project.
Summer.
Sorry, Summer
Summer.
Street.
Just
Summer Street.
It's
Yes.
scaring people.
Yes, so it depends on the number of affordable units and what the state deems, you know, the extent, the grace period of blocking another permit from being requested. So it could be anywhere from a year to 2 years, as far as I know. Yes.
Can we ask?
Sure.
Do you have an offer from a developer?
We have two offers. One would be for a 40B development, and one would be for something for, a home for like adults with disabilities and autism. But again, like, once we sell it to a developer, we don't know,
Right.
like, what they'll do.
Yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
but-
Can I ask a question as a resident, or no, is this not the forum?
I have a question
Um,
Okay.
yeah.
to you, Mr. Chairman. So, the two offers that you're speaking of, that would require you to work with your father so that the parcel is not landlocked, am I correct?
Not necessarily. From what we're told, there is access, there's an easement. I believe that abuts the Vlasich's land. There is an easement in there. I had called Jim about it and told him, you know, to tell
I have
me.
it listed as a
Actually,
utilities
we can-
easement.
It is a
we treat it like
utility.
it has access, because we have the
See?
front piece, so
Yeah.
we can give access to it, so.
Well, you don't
Okay.
have the front piece, do
Yeah,
you?
we do.
You do?
Yeah.
You own it also?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought your father owned it.
Yeah, well, it's all part of the same thing. He'll give me an easement wherever I want on there.
Well, let's be clear.
Okay.
Right now, you don't own it, is that correct?
Right.
Right.
Correct, okay. Through you, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
to you, Jim, is it true that there is an easement so that there would
I
not?
think that's what Bill was gonna answer there.
Yeah.
We just looked at it. It
Yeah.
says
It's-
40-foot wide access and utility easement.
Utilities?
Utilities.
What about?
He said access and utility.
Access utility easement. Access utility easement, says on the
Not
plan.
access and, just access utility.
So that's not a road, correct?
So I guess there's maybe a question as to whether,
Sounds like more.
Utilities
Utility,
access is not a road.
no, we could just, that would allow water and sewer pipes to
Correct.
go through, yeah.
Correct, that's
But-
what a utility is.
But do we know, or are we assuming? 'Cause there's a difference if it said access and utilities. It just says,
Just
probably a
says
question we should.
Wide
understand better.
access and utility easement.
Does it say,
The
and?
building
Oh, yeah, there is an
department,
and sign, yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess you probably have to look at whatever the deed says. We're looking at what came from the information
Yeah.
that, from the assessor's database.
Just as we're going through, this is probably a little more data before your meeting
Yeah.
on the 10th that's relevant.
Okay. Other questions? Sound, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, someone else.
Oh, yes,
I don't know if this is even, if we're allowed to ask questions.
I'll let it, go ahead.
So, I'm an original resident on the street, and, I don't know, how many years ago you guys were you in here? 12 or so? Years
Yep.
ago, where John Hasney wanted to put an additional road with about 5 or 6 houses, right? And that was denied at the time due to the slope of the land or something. They couldn't get, this is my understanding at the time. Couldn't get emergency vehicles there or something to that effect. So my question is, how is it, or do 40Bs not have that regulation, like they can just go do whatever they want, put in a massive building?
40Bs can go in and bypass most of the zoning bylaws. They would still have to make an access that would be emergency vehicle acceptable, whether it's creating a loop roadway or establishing a large enough turnaround within the development so that the fire trucks can get in and maneuver around. But yeah, they basically don't have to turn around and say, yeah, we don't have to abide by the setback requirements, we don't have to abide by, lot size for the types of buildings we're using. There's a lot of open-ended items that they can use as a 40B. Yep. Yes, Josette?
Chief Bailey is here.
Okay.
So can you add anything to that as far as the safety factor of having access for the fire department? Does that get thrown in the mix if they can do what they want with the 40B? Or there has to be rules and regulations for you to have access?
It's all part of the process for the 40B, and we comment on it when and if that development comes forward to us.
Okay,
But you do have input.
Each one, we do have input.
thank you.
Okay. Just for so your meeting on the 10th.
Thursday,
have
right.
Your vote. We have our public hearing on the 17th, so we'll know your vote at that time, and then we can either vote that night before or after the public hearing, or I would recommend after the public hearing, so that any of the people in the audience that want to speak to Article 12 can give their input, and then we'll take it under advisement with what the sewer and water commissioners provide us and make our decision after the public hearing is closed.
Sounds good.
Sounds like a plan.
And did you have another question
No,
or comment? We're
that's
good? Okay. Any other questions on the Finance Committee? Thank you. We'd like to move to Article 12 because it deals with water supply, and since Mr. Abbott's here, we would like to tackle that one next.
Article 18.
Oh, sorry, 18,
Thinking
sorry, 18,
18.
sorry, 18.
Do we have to take a vote on,
No, because we never reconsidered it.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
we had voted for recommendation at
I
town
mean,
meeting.
and
Correct,
we're
so
still, we're still at
in
that, still at that
grace
level.
period, okay.
Yep. Yes, so Article 12 will move to the 17th.
Those appraisals.
Bought the land at a very high cost
We're gonna go to Article 18.
Yes. Let the sewer and water commissioner work its way through and release them for the evening.
Okay, and I have a comment.
Okay.
28 acres. Oh, and that one's even worse because it's the end of the cul-de-sac.
Yeah. Okay. So Article 18 is a general bylaw submitted by Mr. Maraski as an independent petitioner,
No.
looking to add a layer of approval to the extending of water services beyond the boundaries of the town. I know there's been several correspondence back and forth between town administrator, Mr. Maraski, and town council. It's not looking, the way I understand his article, it's not looking to replace the authority of the Board of Selectmen or the Sewer and Water Commissioners. It's to add a additional layer of approval to say the townspeople want to protect our water supply and basically not let it go beyond the natural borders of the town. Comments from Sewer and Water?
This is, we're going to take a formal position at our meeting on the 10th on that. One of the issues, well, we've seen the information that Jim has provided, what the lawyers have said about the article and how it affects what you can and can't do. The other thing is the charter specifically says that the Sewer and Water Commission has exclusive charge of the water department and water system. This would seem to give, take away some of that. Do we need to change the charter, or is the charter subservient to bylaws? The other thing is, when we had the presentation from Joe, he listed that there are 24 properties that we have outside of the town that have had water, with the exception of 2, one being about 10 years ago, another one maybe 15 years ago. The others are ancient, multiple decades ago. You could use the example like Daisy Drive. The boundary is in the middle of the street. No land, no water from the other town. Highland Lake, Campbell Street, the same way. Old Post Road, there's a few houses on Sharon, of which Bernie, our superintendent, has got an agreement that Sharon will take those over. And the commission has not intended to give water outside of the town. And you can look at the property behind Applebee's. Originally, it was going to be there. We said, not interested. We have no interest in doing that. And then they moved it so that a little bit more than half was. We'd said, but the key is our water and our sewer. We want more, and we authorized Jim to negotiate, and he's negotiated what the final agreement, which was signed by Sewer and Water, the Board of Selectmen, and going forward.
Jim, what was the last you heard from Mr. Moraski on his petition?
I haven't heard from Joe since the Sewer Water Commissioners meeting
Okay.
about a week or two ago.
Because there,
I did reach out to him and let him know that he'd be afforded the opportunity to come tonight. But
okay, because there was rumor that he was still contesting some of the claims by the town council, and was hoping at worst it would be referred back to committee so he could bring it back in the spring, fine tune it, and, present a stronger case. So if he meets with you next week when you vote the article and makes that recommendation, let us know.
okay, I
Okay.
mean, refer back to committee or
Yeah.
no action on this one. It's
Well-
either way, it's
Well,
fine.
no action blocks it from coming back because it's a citizen's petition. They can't bring their petition
Oh, I'm
for.
thinking of it, because zoning, you can't bring it back for 2 years, but,
Right.
okay.
But what our opinion being, if we said no action, it's really, the motion would be
From us, right.
FinCom. So
Right, but I mean, if
we
he,
could say no action, and you may say, all right, refer to.
right,
and-
but I mean, if he comes back and, if he comes to you and says, I'm gonna be seeking, refer back to committee, then just pass that information along to us if he meets with you
Yeah.
next week on the article.
Yes.
Full disclosure, had a discussion with Joe on this, and I think that, it's certainly not ready for prime time at this point, and town council was pretty clear on her view of it, but, I would, when the time is right and when this comes before, be a proponent for return to committee, only because, if Joe can't turn town council around, or his legal theory doesn't end up holding water, that's the end of it. But it doesn't kill it. And I know we're all concerned about water, so I think it doesn't hurt to go that route.
Okay.
And I would support that proposal, but I think we should wait.
Okay. Yep, Mark.
Just a basic question about Walpole's water. Everyone always talks about our water. So my understanding is this, that there's this aquifer, but it's not like it's a big lake that just sits there. It's kind of a moving mass of water that travels through the town. It comes from other towns, it passes through, and that the DEP allows Walpole to take so many millions of gallons out of it each year.
Right, per day, they give us a average.
Right, so in other words, but there's this kind of misnomer that the Walpole aquifer, I mean, it's not Walpole's asset. We need to protect it and to do all that,
Right.
but basically, it's water passing through, and the DEP comes to us and says, you can take so much water out. And eventually, with all these housing projects we talk about, theoretically, you would get to a limit where the DEP has told us we can only take so much out, and therefore we couldn't approve additional hookups to it even if we wanted to. Is my,
Yeah,
is that my
no, okay,
fundamental understanding?
the DEP looks at the Neponset aquifer, which basically starts at Boston Harbor, follows the Neponset River. It's in Canton, but the parts that are sort of up ground from us is at Foxborough. There's a part of Foxborough, if you know where the Neponset Reservoir is, which is sort of a little bit further back from Gillette Stadium. We're the first town that actually taps the Neponset aquifer. So there's a Neponset Basin, which is fairly large, and then they have sub-basins. So the Minebrook area is one sub-basin. There's another sub-basin that is the Washington Street wells that go out towards Sharon and towards Foxborough. And then as you go towards the Boston Harbor, there's one in Canton, there's 2 over here, 3 over there, that sort of thing. So what they do is on your water withdrawal permit, they say that we could take, let's assume what they're proposing, 2.53 million gallons a day average. When you look at how we use the water, in January through April, and I've looked at the last 5 years, including this year right now, in those 5 months, at the beginning of, 4 months at the beginning of the year and the 3 at the end, October through December, no one's using outside water, very few. and we average around 2.1 million gallons a day. The issue where we run into this 5.3 is in the summer months, April through September, which is where we have our water ban, where we have been at 2.76, 2.83, and so forth. So it's the
I don't
fluctuation.
wanna tie the meeting up to,
Yeah.
but in general, like, it's not like the
Oh.
town of Walpole can say, we're gonna give additional water to, if we go above that limit that the DEP has told us.
My understanding is you can request an addition. The DEP is going to say, all right, tell us, make the case, and what are your mitigation you're doing to
Right, but
lower
but
our
ultimately,
number?
they control how much water
Yes.
Walpole takes out
That's true,
of this activity.
Can I
right.
just follow up on one thing? Just, I know we're getting off a bit, but, you know, there was a lot of information out there at that meeting last week in South Walpole. There's a bunch of stuff on Facebook. Not everything's accurate out there. Right now, Walpole's current water withdrawal permit is 3.34 million gallons per day. It's been that way for, 5, 10 years, probably even longer. We currently use, on average, 2.4 million gallons per day. What they're proposing as a base, which they've told us for the last 5+ years, at least since I've been the TA, is we're gonna knock you down to 2.53 million gallons, but that has not happened yet. So I think they'd be hard pressed with all these other items coming online, which I'm in the middle of working on a 40B handout, and it includes this information. So anyone who wants it, because I just want the facts out there. I'm so sick of just misinformation floating out there. I'm working with some of the residents in South Walpole. They have 4 pages worth of questions, and I mean solid questions. There's probably about 50 to 100 questions on there. I'm working on filling out that because it's driving me crazy that there's so much misinformation out there about water and traffic, that the town hasn't looked at this or that. We haven't even gotten this application in yet. The state hasn't even approved it yet. I haven't even seen the plans for what they're proposing to do with the Baker Hughes site that they haven't even acquired yet. So I've asked for an extension from those folks, from the mass housing people. Give us an extension to get our comments back until we actually see the plans, what's being proposed. Because once we get our we get 30 days to get our comments in. They get another 30 days to make a decision, yes, you're eligible. And then they can go before the ZBA. So this is a long process. It's not like the town's gotten this. We're trying to work with these guys. No, we haven't even gotten it yet. And that's why we're working on getting that
Right, so,
stuff
but
out there.
just in general, for people to understand, yes, there's water here, but we don't have free access to it. We have to go through the DEP that's gonna tell us what we can and can't do.
One of the things we're expecting is that they're going to tell us not only that it's 2.53, but they're going to say you can only do outside watering 1 day a week. As right now we do 2. A couple of years ago, it was even odd, so everybody had, 3 anyways. That's one of the things that they do. A couple things that they look at is your unaccounted for water. The goal is 10%. We're at 4 and 5. That's not an issue. The other thing is 65 gallons per person per day, and we always are, maybe a year we're under it, maybe 3 years we're over, and either of the things, and the really one you'd be concerned about is the gallons per day per person. They would say it's, you've got to cut back to 1 gallon, 1 day. And that would help in the May through September. And that's the reason I wanted to give you the numbers that it is, what's driving the thing is the use of water in the summer. The other months when people aren't using water outside, we have a,
Thank you.
very reasonable
Thank you,
number.
Mr. Chairman. I'm all set.
Just on the current storage capacity, if all the wells shut down, do we have 1 day, 1 week? How much water do we have storage capacity for?
Depends where you live. And I'll tell you why. If you live
Gravity-fed system.
up on Old Post Road,
Yeah.
to get 32 PSI, the tank has to basically be filled. If you're very close, the house that's right next to
Yeah.
the thing. And that's based at ground level. I don't know if they've got a bathroom on the second floor. Even if it's full, but it doesn't take much for that tank to drop when there are people who are going to be out. And Pat Fasinello lives Neal Street up there. One day he called me, it was a number of years ago, and said, I can just hear a sucking sound. The water's leaving.
Okay.
So it really depends on where you live. As soon as you start dropping, the pressures start dropping. People up on Summer Street, again, that's actually the highest spot in town. But again, as the tank gets lower, you wouldn't have enough pressure to push the water
The
out.
farther away you are, the
Yeah.
less likely you're getting water.
So if you live in East Walpole, right at the Norwood line, you're the last one to run out, so.
How about the, how about the development down off of Summer Street? Would that 40B be in the end of the line, middle of the line?
Well, actually, the Washington booster pumps it up to the tank, so as long as the wells are pumping, there would be water on Summer Street till you get to the tank.
I was
Yeah.
just wondering, are we at a point where, based on the downtown growth, woodworkers, possibly this Summer Street and Darwin Lane with 40Bs, is there a place to build an extra storage container, and is it
Yeah.
financially feasible to consider that at this point?
Yeah, you could. I mean, when we considered, we brought a few years ago to this board about repainting the Old Post Road tank. One of the possibilities was, it's 80 feet tall, but the last 5 feet are what give the pressure, the 32 PSI for the area. So basically, the 75 feet are just there holding the water up that you really need. And one of the thoughts was, well, go with an elevated tank. So you'd have a tall structure, and then you'd have a big tank up there. It was going to be like 165 feet, cost $1 bazillion. And the folks said, look, we've done things in our houses, bigger pipes, so they get volume, not pressure.
Yeah.
So you could do that. The other thing is this summer, we've had no trouble filling the tanks at the end of the day. That's unusual. Again, it's outside water use that is driving. And so if we were to say 1 day a week, the state DEP tells us, then you're sort of extending the life of our system.
Yes, Josette?
It's a little bit off center, but I've been getting questions that, and you're the great one to clarify it, because in fact, you are the chairman of the board there, that, would you explain that the water of this town does not go anywhere unless it's approved by your board? You cannot have your arm twisted, as it was put to me, and have to supply Mr. Kraft for his new routine up there. And it's like, that's Foxborough, we're Walpole.
Right.
And you make the decisions, but maybe it's
Well,
not the messenger, it's the, so.
Yeah,
maybe
well,
you
in the
could-
case of the hotel behind Applebee's, we said no. And that would have ended it unless they could do something, and then it's an entity that owns property in Walpole, and certainly if they owned like a square foot, I think we'd still say no. It was because it was a significant part of their development was in Walpole.
I know when we were talking about other articles about Norfolk possibly coming in and such, it was very adamant that would not happen.
Right.
It would be a case by case.
In the case
that
of
would be
Southwood,
just
at least twice they've asked, and it's been a long time, we said no.
that's something that should really be out there, that,
I know that was brought up at
It
the
was up during
fields,
the
during the
field
fields,
meeting,
yeah, last
part of the
fall.
exactly, it's
Q&A, yeah.
it's
Yeah.
still going out there, except now they're using the potential of Kraft's buildings out there on Route 1 when he starts building.
Thank you. Well, I just wanted to piggyback on what Josette said through you, Mr. Chairman. I think when I've talked to Joe Morosky about this article, his concern is not with the Sewer and Water Commission as currently constituted, but imagine that you had 5 developers elected to the Sewer and Water Commission. I don't know, and I think that's where Joe's concern is, that couple layers of review wouldn't hurt. So, again,
More for the future instead of what's going on
Exactly
right
right.
now,
Mhm.
hypothetically.
Kathleen and then Denny.
I think Denny was ahead of me, but
Okay.
I was just gonna, doesn't it have to get approved by the Board of Selectmen?
They sent up the intermunicipal agreement,
Yeah.
and then Sewer and Water signs off on
Yeah,
that
so you got your
agreement.
2 layers now.
You do?
Right.
Right. He's looking for 3.
Good. All right, no, just
He's looking for a
clarifying.
150-person body to
There
say,
you
go ahead, yeah.
Gotcha. Sorry.
That was my point.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we'll table this one until the 17th also? All righty. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Articles 19 and 20. Is petitioner here? Okay.
So just to clarify, so when do you want to take that up? Right after you take up Darwin Lane that night?
Yeah, we'll do it after the public hearing, get the input from the community and vote those.
Okay.
Ready? Steve?
Oh,
Yep, we're
Oh,
doing
okay.
19 and
Sarah.
20, yep.
all you.
Coming? Jimmy, you want to come?
Yeah.
So we heard your presentation previously. We voted recommendation at town meeting, and we're here to review the comments and questions that were sent out to town council, and open up to the committee any additional questions or concerns to the petitioners, so we can maybe reach a decision on this article. Who wants to start off?
I just have question clarifications for the money to be spent. Jim, we kind of talked about if this goes forward and approves, what is the process and the amount of money it will cost? I think that's still kind of where the questions are. Like, can we wait for a full charter rewrite before spending the funds that was estimated at $10,000?
Okay, I haven't been through this process. I answered all your questions, or town council answered all your questions. I'm not comfortable going below the 10,000, because I honestly really don't know when the legal cost, what's the cost she's gonna, our town council's gonna incur as a result of changing this, what's the town clerk gonna incur as a result of general code, the update with general code could be $1,500 to $3,000, so 10,000, and I know, but if it's less than 10,000, it'll be turned
But
back
if we
in.
approve, we would have to do that now, not wait till a full, like, charter review kind of committee.
I think one of the questions, I don't have it in front of me. but
It
you
was
answered that question.
So, yeah, I believe
It was kinda
town
unclear.
council had said that we need to do both of them at the same time, the bylaw and the charter changes simultaneously. So other towns have not done it that way, but, you know.
This is the Reading question, yeah.
Yeah, so
Because
she
Reading
had
did it
said,
one way,
yeah,
so-
yeah, that for Walpole, we need to do both of them simultaneously.
What she advised, okay.
Yeah,
But what she did say was that you would not be required to generate an entire charter and send copies to all the members of a written copy to the entire community. If we updated the websites, and then if people came in for a copy, you print down what you have on your file, you don't have to physically distribute to every member of the community a copy of the rewrite or the amendments to the charter. So the cost could be less and just be, as on a request-by-request basis, you print out pages for people. So I think that was one of the big differences there, was the entire town doesn't have to be notified that we're changing terminology within the charter or the bylaws. And as long as we make sure that there's a copy on the website for people to find, they can download what they want, or they can come to town hall, get a copy printed. It cuts back on the cost. Yes.
I guess I'll comment and say that, you know, we had a good discussion last time about some of the nuances of the article, and it would have been nice if we could have, you know, talked Jim down and gotten the cost a little lower, but I
Give it back.
I don't, in this case, want to let perfect be the enemy of the good, and you know, let this opportunity go by. I feel really strongly that this is an important thing to do for our town government, you know, and I was thinking a lot about the private sector where I spend most of my time, and just the vast investments that, you know, companies are making because they've realized that diversity in leadership yields strong results. It's been demonstrated now in a number of different ways, you know, financial results, creativity, innovation, you know, it all kind of, you see the, you know, numbers improve when you've got critical mass of gender diversity in corporate leadership. So to me, that's worth even $10,000 if that's what it comes to. So I support this article as written, and, you know, hopefully it'll come out a little cheaper, but if we have to, we have to.
Susan, then Mark, then Lisa.
So I'm probably one of the oldest feminists in the room. I support this in theory, but as a practical matter, because the changes don't affect the substantive change, spending upwards to $10,000 is problematic for me. I would prefer to see a resolution to change the charter and bylaws the very next time that they are amended or updated, so that all of these changes are incorporated. And that way, we're not spending money for, you know, a change that really doesn't affect anything substantively. And I don't know, I just feel like it's a lot of money for the word change. But I do think we should go on record as wanting to change this and requiring that it be changed when the documents are next reviewed. So that would be my position.
Mark?
So can I respond to that or no?
Sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, I also agree, and I really tried to find a way to minimize the costs, because I also don't want to spend money irresponsibly. I feel like, you know, town money is kind of like campaign money. Like somebody has given us the money to spend responsibly, and I most definitely want to spend it responsibly. So I did try to explore that option to where we could vote to approve it and vote to make the change, but then the actual cost to the charter reprinting and stuff be delayed until such time as, you know, we're making some other significant change. Town council advised that that was not possible. But as, you know, Mr. Trudell noted, it is possible for us, like, kind of, if there are not funds, to provide this letter saying, you know, the Board of Selectmen is now referred to as the Select Board, and, you know, here's the charter. So, but I do think that it's not a small change. I think it will be a significant change, and I think, you know, the movement in Massachusetts is to more gender inclusive. So all 54 cities have gender inclusive titles to their, you know, legislative boards, to their, like, you know, city council, things like that. And according to my research, 99 Massachusetts towns have made the change. So Board of Selectmen started in the, you know, 1600s, when, you know, towns decided that they needed to create a body to kind of manage the town's finances and businesses from between town meetings. So between town meetings, there had to be a body to kind of manage the town's business. So that started then, and, you know, all Massachusetts towns were called Board of Selectmen, and they were a board of a few select men.
I understand the point of the article.
Yeah.
I'm in favor of it.
Right.
Not,
But I do think
let
it's
me
a
just
significant
finish. Let me
change.
just finish.
Yeah.
I would be very surprised if town council said we could not approve a resolution to do this the very next time bylaws and charter are revised. I've not seen an opinion like that. I don't think that I would see an opinion like that,
I
because
wouldn't, yeah.
I think town meeting is within its rights to pass a resolution to that effect, basically saying the next time it's changed, these will have to be changes that, you know, we voted to make. I'm not arguing against it. I'm in favor of it. I
Mhm.
like the idea. I just have a problem with spending that kind of money for something that really doesn't affect any change right now. And I think we can go on record as saying, this is what we want to do, we want to be inclusive, but I think that it can wait until, and I know there are a number of issues people are talking about where they want to have reviews of the bylaws and the charter. So I don't think it's going to be too much longer that those documents will be reviewed. So
Yeah. The
I'm not
bylaw is
arguing
one thing, the
against
charter is something else. The charter is where we run into costs. I mean, the bylaw can be, the town bylaw can be updated, fairly inexpensively. I don't know, Jim, if you have any breakdown, but it's my understanding that the charter is the charter reprint is the costly item. But town council had said that we can't, so if we make a resolution, the Board of Selectmen will continue to be the Board of Selectmen. It's not going to change. So somewhere in some, file of fall town meeting 2019, perhaps the town meeting might have resolved to change it, but nothing would have changed.
Also,
So we can't change it until we change the bylaw and the charter.
Also, the last time, I'm sorry, the only reason I'm up here is I was just the original author of this. That the last time we called the Charter Commission, nothing was changed, and that was what, in 2000? You had the
2006, but.
We had the
but
2006 Acts, but there was another charter, but in any event,
Jim had updated something to the bylaws. Or the personnel,
director.
finance.
A very long time, and we changed it for finance director too, and so to me, this is something that's, and I'm not gonna call it substantive, because it's not a substantive change, that's a different legal term.
Yeah.
But it is something that is very important for this town meeting
Significant.
now.
Yeah.
Significant.
Mark?
No, thank you.
So, just the three quick ones. So in following up on that, the town can't decide to implement this and make the change unless we change the charter. That's what the town council's
That's what
saying. So
town
you can't just
council,
say,
yeah.
let's just do it anyways, and we don't need to worry about changing the charter.
Right, we can't do like what the town of
Okay,
Reading had
and the
done.
last time we changed the charter,
I was actually on the last charter committee, and it was called in 2003, and in 2006, we brought forward housekeeping items. A couple of lines of communication had been intercepted because the position no longer existed, so we fixed a couple of
okay,
housekeeping
so
things.
it's probably years before we'll go ahead and want to
Actually,
change the charter.
we are due to actually call for another charter review committee. The Board of Selectmen did an ad hoc where they took parts of the charter and they each reviewed sections and says, these are our recommendations, and nothing got passed. So,
Would passing this be the push?
it could be the push to say, hey, since we're making this change.
Making this change, we should go ahead and look at all, okay. The other question I have is on Article 20, second substitute. It says substitute selectman board member for selectman. Why do we have selectman? Should that be just select board member for selectman?
So I think it's supposed to be so anytime it says select man, we would use select board member.
Well, it says, second, substitute
Yeah,
A, selectman board member for selectman.
Sure, yep.
And B, select board members for selectmen. So I don't understand why the selectman board member is there.
So are you saying, because it says select men?
Yeah.
it
Right,
should be select
It
board
should say
member.
select, you're catching a typo.
okay. And then my third comment is, this is Article 19 for Section 9, office title, may be addressed. What does that mean? This is,
Yeah, so I know Sarah
Yeah.
addressed this last time, but the reason that why I kept that in there, the office title, was just in names of self-determination. We have a lot of town officials who are very proud of their titles and who want to keep them, and we don't want to stop them from keeping their titles. And so we want, and even though officially the select board will be the select board, and they will be referred to as the select board, that if someone wants to be a select woman, they can refer to themselves as select woman. And think
This is in perpetuity, or this is just current members that are already?
perpetuity. So if I were elected to the select board, I could refer to myself as a select person, a select man, or a select woman, or a select board member.
Yeah, I,
But when you refer to the entire board, the idea is the board name would change. So on all official communication, on, newspaper articles, whatever, the board name would have that gender inclusive select board title. There wouldn't be any select man officially.
yeah, I still disagree with you. To me, I can see if you're in the office now, you get to ride the office out, but you run for the office, you're a select board member, and you shouldn't be able to refer to yourself, selectman, we're gonna pay the money to not have you do that anymore, so that one really bothers me, but.
Well, it's basically just what is already happening in practice, right?
Yeah.
So we had a select woman run for select woman, even though
Right,
technically.
but do
She
I,
was
as
a
a board, get to say, it's one thing I say, oh, call me Selectman Mark Sullivan, or I can say, no, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Chairperson, please refer to me as Selectman. Like, I have the right at the meetings to make you call me a Selectman, and I just don't think that that's appropriate to do. Again, I think it's kind of all or nothing. I think also that with this, I would approve this. I don't wanna spend the money, but unless, I would say we do this, we spend the money, and hopefully it drives to town to put together the charter committee, which I can imagine is really difficult, tenuous, and all of that to do.
Depends
But
on what
I
they're
wouldn't
charged
be
with, yes.
comfortable in not doing it, because the town council has said, you have to change the charter if you're gonna implement this. You can't just do it in name only and not change the charter, so it's a fairly black and white, at least to me, from a financial standpoint.
Lisa?
Yeah, I speak in support of Megan's fantastic sort of facts, that this isn't just language, this is actually evidence-based, that our community and our society changes when language of bias is put away and rejected, which should have happened 13 years ago. It's really quite shocking that we're still faffing around with this, and we do need to spend the money eventually. The attorney cost, that's a set cost. We spend it now, or we spend it next year, or next year, but it's there. We have to spend it eventually. There's absolutely no way any of us want to live in this town with our children growing up thinking that, oh, someday I might be a select man. That's, it has to change eventually. As far as the cost of reprinting it, I'm okay with the solution proposed to question 7, that if we don't actually have the money, then we still, take a positive vote. We do not do the reprint, and then, as other people have suggested, there will be some additional pressure for the review to happen, because that vote has been taken, and it has been clear that the town body would like this change to occur as soon as the money is available. And the issue of, I like how you put it, Audrey, self-determination. Again, and I like also Megan saying, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Yes, in a perfect world, we would all maybe use perfect language, but we all can't even agree on what perfect language is. I think this is good language, and I think it's respectful to allow people who have a very strong opinion to go ahead and say, fine, you may refer to yourself in a way that maybe is not my favorite, but I think we can be somewhat flexible on that, at least for the next 13 years, until we finally work on this charter again. But thank you for sort of reporting back with all of these great answers. I think every question is answered, and I think the money is reasonable. I think, to be living in a society where it's really okay to have gendered language for town offices is not right.
Jeff?
Article 19, gender neutral board name, and just to reiterate the point made earlier, that the title just doesn't give way to a gender neutral title. Though on Article 20, we're talking about chairman and changing that to chair. I just really believe that if we really want to be gender neutral, the office title for the select board member needs to have an official office title. There's no arbitrary selectman, select woman, select person. That's it.
Andrew, then Kathleen?
I just want to echo the amazing comments by Megan and Lisa that are powerful and absolutely true. Again, I said this when we had our previous discussion. To me, this is not a question of why, it's a question of why not. And I'm not going to repeat what I said in our last meeting. Lisa and Megan and others have said it so well. But let me ask one substantive question to the petitioners and to Jim Johnson, and then end. So my substantive question is, according to the handout of the petitioners, in my understanding from Jim Johnson, and Jim, please confirm this, both 19 and 20 require a simple majority vote at town meeting.
Council's confirmed that to me, yeah.
Got it. Great, because there was a question, I think it was by Chairman Trudell, about whether the zoning bylaws would be changed, and the council clearly responds to that question, saying, yeah, of course, those votes require 2/3, but this is the town bylaws and the charter, so it's a simple majority, right? I just want to confirm that.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the one substantive question I wanted to confirm. A few things here that have been brought up tonight. You know, the number one thing I would like to emphasize is that I think that this really matters. It's a significant change, because Lisa said it so well. You know, I have a 4-year-old daughter. Just people growing up in this town, every May you see signs out and about the town election, and to change the title for the highest executive board in this town, and for kids to see signs and meet people and know that they're on the select board and not the board of selectmen, that matters. That is not insignificant or not substantial. Second point, everyone said this, but again, the cost is an upper bound. I don't think it's northward of 10,000. I think it's, southward of 10,000. Why? Well, about 100 towns in Massachusetts, and every city has gender inclusive language. So this is not the first, rodeo in terms of case law. It's pretty clear cut here. And also in terms of the printing, whether this galvanizes a new charter rewrite committee, I don't know. I don't think that's a reason to not vote this in, or a reason to vote it in. It's just ancillary to the point. I mean, I would like a charter committee rewrite, but as Chairman Trudell said, those are risky. They can easily fall through, and nothing comes of them. And then finally, there's a point here about how people refer to themselves and the flexibility. I think Mark and Jeff have raised really good questions about, wanting a consistent language, a consistent title. And I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know this, but I just want to raise the point that how enforceable, if at all, is it to require people to refer to themselves a certain way? I mean, and not even just referring to the First Amendment, just in terms of the flexibility we already allow. We already allow this flexibility. We allow people, like the petitioner said, to run and have campaign signs that say, I'm running as a select woman. I thought that was great, by the way. So for all these reasons, I just want to say, I love the thorough questions we've had. I think the time is ripe, and that this is going to have a significant impact. And so I'm all for it.
Kathleen again?
I just wanted to add, at the risk of preaching to the choir, I don't know of any other discriminatory language that we would find in our charter and say it's okay, it's not worth correcting for $10,000. So I do understand what the gentlemen across the table are saying, and I appreciate that you're so supportive of this. But I do think it gets down to a freedom of speech sort of question. I mean, they can describe themselves in whatever way they want. We're saying, as a governmental body, this is how the language we will use. What individuals use is not really in our control. That's my understanding of it. But I appreciate that people understand the importance of this to people like me.
Can I add, excuse me, just on this office title, is it, I just want to call myself this so I can just do this, or is it, I'm on the select board, and I can go to the select board and say, no, you need to refer to me as Selectman Mark Sullivan. I agree with you. Whatever someone wants to call yourself. But if someone can use this just to be different and difficult at a board and say, No, I'm demanding that the board call me selectman. The article says that I can do that, and therefore all correspondence, and that's how I address myself officially. That's my question to this. If it doesn't do that, then fine, leave it in there. But if it allows someone to do that, you know, sometimes people just like to find the littlest thing and make a point out of it and say, I'm gonna drag this, maybe like I'm doing now, I don't know. But
I didn't want to say that.
that's my only concern, is that someone can say, no,
You know
the
people.
article says this, and therefore I can make you board, I can make the town refer to me as the way I want to be referred to. That's my concern.
I just wanted to make a point that, you know, to piggyback on that, Article 20 takes away my ability, or yours, to call yourself, in the future, the chairman. You'll now be referred to as the chair.
Actually, it's been the practice of this board not to use the term chairman pretty much since I came on the board 5 years ago.
I disagree with that statement. Everyone called you chairman.
I just did.
Everyone says
And I support this change.
Yeah.
The chair,
Well,
yeah.
You're the chair, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Through the chairman.
So everyone calls you. Sorry.
all right.
Okay.
Okay, Josette?
Being the oldest one here, I am not the woman, I am not a woman's lib. I respectfully listen to your passion, and you are very passionate about this. To me, it's a label, and it's more important about the job you do than the label you carry. And I can honestly think of better ways to use our money than to be making this change and all of the change that has to go with the letterheads and everything else for correspondence that these different committees are all gonna now incur extra charges for all of that to be changed. That being said, I respect all of you and where you're coming from. You're in a different world than I am from. So I am going to vote no on both of the articles, but that is the reason I'm voting no, is I'm from a different generation, and to me, it's a lot of do about nothing from my perspective. I respect where yous are coming from. I've got a 52-year-old daughter who's, you know, in all of this and that, but I'm me, and nobody's gonna change me, sorry.
Don't want to.
Actually, Brian first.
So I want to applaud both of you for bringing this forward. I think it's very empowering, and I fully support it. And I think the price is very low for how empowering it is. Having a daughter who I want to be able to choose to do anything that she wants to do, I fully support this.
And I just have to add, because I am taking a class right now called Understanding Identity, and I'm really working for an A in this class. I mean, one of the key things that I'm learning over and over and again is that it is not my place to say whether or not something is offensive to someone else. And I'm not saying, Josette, that you are. I understand where you're coming from.
Thank you.
But knowing you, I also know you would never want to hurt someone else. So for me, if this is offensive to others, that's reason enough to take it under consideration and vote for it. It's not my place to say, I personally am affected by this, but it's not my place to say, oh, Lisa, this bugs you, it doesn't bug me, so you need to rethink how you're feeling about it. When it's hurtful of another group, you kind of have to do something about it. So that's where I come from.
I am basically of the point, and again, it's probably my age, that I am comfortable within my own skin. I don't need a label to tell me who I am, but not everybody's like that. And the world that you are working in and raising your children in, my youngest is 44. So we're completely different worlds and such. So I can respectfully agree with what you have to offer, and just leave it at that. I hear what you're saying, but as far, in my conscience, I cannot vote for something that I don't really agree with.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, I'm gonna cut off debate.
I'm not debating, I want to ask a question.
Okay, yes.
Of the chairman?
The chair.
I'm not even going to call him anything. I'm going to stay out of trouble.
Hey, you, yeah.
And just looking at this through, and thinking of your comment, is there, if 19 passed and 20, is there a difference? I mean, do they have to go together?
That's
Or
my
what
understanding from
happens if
town
one
council.
doesn't?
So legally, if one passes and the other doesn't, I imagine nothing will happen.
Is that, so I just wondered.
I don't know
not that it
why
really
one would
matters.
pass
Yeah,
and one wouldn't, because they both require just a simple majority, so I can't imagine somebody would support
it's more of a
19 but not
logistics
20,
question,
but.
understanding, because trying to read through the language a little bit to see where one over the other.
I would just say that the bylaws, the administrative function of the town in Article 20 had a lot of spelling mistakes that we're also trying to fix with this article too, so just so you know.
Thank you.
So, what's before us right now is to individually move 19 and 20 to reconsider and then entertain a motion for either favorable action, refer back, or no action. I just want to clarify that the verbiage that's in the booklet is the warrant, and where it was a citizen's petition, that's the language we're voting. And it was brought to my attention that there's still a typo in Article 20.
That's Mark raised.
Yeah, and Mark raised, so yes, the second substitution, which is actually in the warrant, the way it was written, under subsection A, it says selectman board member, so we can vote this article favorable action, but somebody at town meeting will need to make a substitute motion to change it to select board member, just so the petitioners know about that.
I have a question about that.
Yes.
So it seems to be a typo in how the warrant was written, because in the actual petition that I signed,
Okay.
it says select board member.
Okay.
So the language says select board member here that we submitted.
the warrant was
That they
mistyped.
submitted, and that the warrant says selectman board member. So I'm just wondering, if it's a typo in the transcription of the warrant, do we need a substitute motion?
Okay. Then I would go based on the contents of the petition,
Yeah, so the
because that can
petition,
be submitted as evidence to the moderator.
this is just from, I think, Liz Gaffney, yeah, or the Board of Registrar stamped PDF that's not, editable, searchable.
Right.
And it just says select board member, and
Okay.
here it says selectman board member.
Okay.
So, again,
All right. So when we get to Article 20, we'll make a clarification on that. Okay, so for Article 19, I need a motion by
motion to reconsider Article 19?
by Andrew,
Oh, yeah.
Second?
seconded by Kathleen. All in favor of reconsidering, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain?
I'm opposing to reconsidering, I'd like to have some more time.
Okay,
That doesn't sound like I'm gonna have that
14-1-0. Yeah. Okay. Alrighty. And who would like to put forward a motion?
I will.
Kathleen?
Motion to approve favorable action.
Favorable action.
Article 19,
Okay,
there's no funding, so
right, as presented in the
it's
booklet.
presented in the book.
Does that need funding, or is 20 needs the funding?
Who's seconding?
Megan?
Megan? Okay. Yep, okay.
Gotta spell my last
I'm gonna
name.
do this by a show of hands so we can get the,
I have a question.
yes.
So if there is no funding, so help me,
It's
Jim.
under Article 2.
We've already
Did it under
approved the
Article
funding.
2, which you guys already voted for.
Right, but I mean, so this doesn't spell out any figure at all.
Correct.
It's all covered under Article 2, because under Article 2, you guys voted to put $20,000 in the town clerk's budget. Liz and I would work together to make sure that all the updates are made to the general code and charter and everything.
Okay, so if this ends up costing more than $10,000.
She's gotta make it fit in her budget
Or,
or
I'll
come
have to
back.
Take it out of legal, or,
Yeah.
the worst case, I'll be back here to ask for a reserve fund, but we'd exhaust all other options before we came back here.
Right, so we have a motion for favorable action on Article 19 as presented in the book. By a show of hands, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay. Opposed? Denny, Susan, Josette, and myself. Uh, 11-4. Article 20. Andy?
Motion to reconsider Article 20?
Seconded by
Second.
Kathleen. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 15-0.
No, I'm fine. I'm for the reconsideration. I just wanted to think about it.
Okay. Ready? Motion for Article 20,
Motion for
Aye.
favorable action, Article 20.
as presented in the warrant with the amendment that the term selectman board member should be select board member
Yes.
in paragraph 2.
As presented in the
Book.
booklet.
As
with the
amended.
under-
Mark said.
As amended,
Just
yes.
what, yeah, what Mr.
Yeah.
As the
what he
chairman
said.
said.
Maybe for
Chairman.
posterity's sake, what Mr. Chairman said,
Okay.
in case that's the last time.
I just try to get it right the first. Okay. So as amended, seconded by Kathleen. She beat you to it.
Mark can do it.
Okay.
I just thought we should be gender.
Yeah, I would like it.
All right, seconded by Mark. By a show of hands again, all in favor? Okay. Same. All opposed? Same vote, 11-4-0. Same people. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
Working
Thank
for
you.
the-
thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Next, you want me to stay up here for this?
For those of you who didn't see the planning board meeting, there was a procedural issue. They published and voted what the warrant had and not what the final language of the petitioner had. And they opted not to consider the actual language that the petitioner brought forward. And Andrew's going to give us more information on that.
Yeah, if anyone doesn't have a one-page statement, it's just more than one page that I wrote up. I wanted to be crystal clear here, so I'm sorry, it's 8 paragraphs. This will take me about 3 minutes, but I just want to be extremely explicit. I believe Article 14 is a very good inclusionary zoning bylaw. It would help maintain and improve affordable housing in Walpole. I believe town meeting should pass this bylaw overwhelmingly, but now is not the right time. Town meeting should wait to vote on this inclusionary zoning bylaw until the spring 2020 town meeting. It pains me to suggest delay in this bylaw, for it is clearly needed. A pair of 40B developments totaling 300 units is very likely coming to Summer Street in South Walpole. Walpole cannot do anything about it. Why? Because only 7.1% of our housing units are deemed affordable by the state. This lack of affordable housing is bad on its face, but it's worse because it exposes us to unwanted 40B projects. That said, I think the main motion on Article 14 before fall town meeting should be, quote, refer back to committee. I recommend this unfortunate delay because Article 14 should get a full and fair public hearing before the planning board. It has not. The planning board held its public hearing on Article 14 last Thursday, October 3rd. The vote was 2-0-3, 2 voting yes and 3 voting to abstain. Only the verbatim warrant article text of Article 14 was considered. The motion text of Article 14, the full bylaw text, was not considered. Some of the planning board members who voted abstain indicated that they would be in favor of a motion to refer back to committee. According to Mass General Law, Chapter 48, subsection 5, a planning board is required to have a public hearing on a zoning bylaw change coming before town meeting. There is an explicit checklist, Form 7, which must be signed by the town clerk that must be followed. A 14-day public notice is required. Only the 5 sentences of Article 14 were printed in the notice. The full inclusionary zoning bylaw that was drafted by the Walpole Housing Partnership Committee is 5 pages. The final language of the full 5-page bylaw was reviewed and approved by town council, but the final language was not ready in time for the 14-day notice of the planning board public hearing. Because the hearing didn't discuss the full bylaw text, even if town meeting were to pass Article 14 via a substitute motion, and here's the key point here, there is potential for legal disputes on whether the proper procedures were followed. I also recommend a refer back to committee for Article 15. Article 15 creates a housing trust to promote more affordable housing. The planning board was not required to hold a public hearing on Article 15, but because the inclusionary zoning bylaw and the housing trust work in tandem, I feel it's best to also delay town meeting's consideration of Article 15. The failure to follow process is due to poor communication. The Walpole Housing Partnership twice requested meetings before the planning board on July 18th and August 15th to solicit input on Articles 14 and 15. However, no communications, recommendations, or direction was received from the planning board about their public hearing until the hearing began. Going forward, I hope our good faith outreach to the planning board is reciprocated.
What is that?
I'm disappointed to read all this because I think Article 14, you guys did a great deal of work. I was able to attend your meeting. I learned so much more, our presentation that was done to us, so much more. Attended the 40B presentation on Summer Street last week. I was like, okay, I know this. I've got this. I'm doing my homework, and I think it's unfortunate that due to just things not being published, printed, public hearings not being set, I think that is very unfortunate that we're not going forward with this with town meeting.
So, Andrew, just to clarify, if I read and understood you correctly, because you read that kind of fast. So, because of procedural issue by the planning board, this, if approved and passed, could be challenged in the courts.
A developer could come and say, no, you don't have a legitimate bylaw because there was no public hearing, and yeah.
So let me ask this question. If that is the case and it's determined that way, it goes through a legal proceeding, the bylaw would be in place now. It would have to go through there, and then we would, if it's approved by the town, it'll get approved again later. You may end up dealing with that legal matter. I guess you spend some money, as I start thinking this, talking this out loud through.
Yeah.
But you could stop something from happening, or making people do this now if it gets passed.
Mhm.
So we're delaying something that may be beneficial for a potential legal risk that we're unsure of to clean up the process later.
It doesn't prohibit the authorizing boards to entertain those things. It's just that there's no bylaw requiring a developer to do that.
And if we go forward with this and town meeting says no, then it can't be brought up for another year? Is that what it is?
2
years.
2 years.
2 years, yeah.
Okay.
It's very unfortunate.
There's an exception to that. If we vote to refer back to committee.
Yeah, but it does.
And on the floor, they bring forward a motion for favorable action and it fails, it reverts back to our main motion to be revoted.
And there's also.
Because it was a substitute motion.
So if we vote now to refer this to committee, but it still goes before the.
Somebody on the town floor wants to make it, the main motion favorable action, and it fails.
It can come back
The
up
substitute
again.
motion failed, so then you default back to the original motion of refer back to committee, and you vote that. That would then not block them for 2 years to come back with the article.
But if that happened and there was favorable action on the substitute motion,
Then you're opening up to potential
Hindrance,
legal
right.
issues. Yeah.
Down the road.
Yeah.
But then you can amend.
Jim, I think, had a comment first. No, you're good.
you'd have to
Okay.
have a new hearing.
Kathleen?
To me, we have no choice. I respect Andrew for pointing this out to us, but now that we have this in writing and we're aware of this, I mean, how do we proceed? And with this as a public document and this conversation being a public conversation, knowing we have this hole in our planning.
I mean, the articles are all set to be put forward as a Springtown meeting article. It's been vetted, it's been blessed by town council. We've all seen the documents and so forth, and it's just a case of
Another hearing.
getting the proper
Getting the
public
timing
hearing on the proper language.
And one clarifying point that I didn't write in this letter, there were a number of steps to remedy the situation, 3 that we tried once we found out that this wasn't going to be the case. Well, the first was in the moment, we tried to pull up the specific Mass General Law, Chapter 48, subsection 5, and the set of guidelines from the State Department of Housing and Community Development. Section D4, adopting and amending zoning bylaws. That's where that Form 7 comes from, where the checklist. We tried to argue at that planning board hearing while it was happening, that given that the public hearing notice included only the warrant text, but the full bylaw text, the 5 pages, was available, could they submit that for a discussion? The planning board members had read it and gotten it. That was supported, that idea was supported by a few planning board members. The chair did not allow it. So that was the first step we tried to do. Then the.
Andrew, can I cut you off?
Go ahead.
Okay. I don't want to have feuds between boards.
Yeah.
And you and I have already talked, so.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So,
I would like to move to return this article to committee. And the reason why I'm saying that, for one, I think the group feels that that's the best result, but also I'm reluctant to have anything go forward where we're buying ourselves a lawsuit down the road.
No,
It's
that
just a
don't make
bad practice,
I
and
agree.
I'm disappointed
Yeah.
because I think we were all on board to support this. They do support it, but I think that it would just, at the end of the day, be cleaner, neater, and
and follow
if we
process.
revisit it in the spring. So that's my motion to
Okay.
return to committee.
Well, first we need a motion to reconsider.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Wait, can
motion
I
to
just,
reconsider?
I just want to say just two clarifying things that I misspoke the last time I was before this board, that the safe harbor, we didn't get the safe harbor because of Moose Hill, because it was approved back in 2015 and there was a window in which we had to submit them. We can submit, I can give more clarifying it, but I misspoke when I said that it was because we didn't have a housing production plan in place, so I want to correct myself. The other thing is that the housing trust and the housing partnership can't be the same thing, but that was wrong. The housing trust, if established, when established, the housing partnership could become the housing trust. So I just want to correct myself. Sorry.
Okay, first,
Hmm?
I have
Can I ask?
I have like
Yeah.
a
No, no, you
legal
I
can-
have a motion to reconsider.
consider, seconded by Denny. Okay, questions and comments? Mark?
I have a question. So I have no knowledge of why the planning board didn't take this up before, my question is there an issue with this before the planning board? In other words, will they take it up before the spring meeting?
Yes.
I can answer that without casting any aspersions.
At least attempted.
We've attempted to get input at 2 previous public meetings where we had joint sessions with them. We didn't get a lot out of that. However, we've had individual conversations with planning board members, so you can reach out. One of them's in the room. You can reach out to them. I would actually hope that some of them would speak at it at town meeting, maybe. You can watch the hearing where they were prohibited from discussing the full text, but they discussed the little 5 sentences, so you can get their views on that. So yeah.
I mean, to me, this is a huge issue for the town.
Yeah.
There's 300 units going up.
Yeah.
And for the planning board, and again, I don't know anything about it, so I should probably be careful. But I'm concerned that they
Yeah.
didn't take this up. And,
Well, whether this passed or not, the 300 units is still going to be able to go forward because,
no, I know, but
Yeah.
this is a critical
Right.
item. And
yes, it's not going to stop
are
those.
we gonna feel
300.
comfortable that we will be able to have it in front of the town spring meeting?
Jim, is the planning board required to post a public hearing on any zoning article before?
They have to post it.
They have to post
Yeah.
it. So as long as the text that gets submitted for the warrant is a complete text, then they will be public hearing and voting on the complete text,
Okay, thank
which
you.
is basically in place.
Right.
Cross my.
Kathleen?
Mine's just quick, following up on Mark's comment. I think citizens are clamoring at this moment
Zoning.
for something like this, so that at least they know we're moving in the right direction. And I just want to express my disappointment, I don't know the details, but my disappointment that we can't at least say to them, look at all this great work that was done, and we're moving forward as fast as we can with it, because we're not moving as fast as we can.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. I wonder, in this very informative and very sad paper from Andrew, do you speak on behalf of the entire Walpole Housing Partnership, or are there differing opinions within the body that submitted these articles?
So we have the chair of the Walpole Housing Partnership right here. Audrey, if you don't mind me saying, Audrey read this before I submitted it to you all. Also, select person, Ben Barrett, read it.
Board member.
The board member. And so, I gotta watch my language. So those two people helps check my, this is from me though. So, we have not communicated this fully, the full details of this to the housing partnership because we wanted to see how this meeting panned out. Is that fair to say, Audrey? But
I can't speak on behalf of the board. We haven't had a meeting. We're hoping to have one on October 15th. I have heard a couple members are disappointed in this as well.
Well, disappointed, yes, but would you say there's a consensus that this is the right move?
I can't say that.
Can't say that.
If I may just elaborate on that, part of the information that went into me making this motion, again, just as an individual in this committee, came from knowledge, secondhand information that's Ben Barrett told me from talking to town council on Friday. There was a lot of back and forth with town council on Friday in the wake of this. So this whole legal issue is not just my own creating. I'm not an attorney. It's town council's quasi-advisement. So.
So it's just a clarifying point on the process. We've voted to reconsider.
We've made a motion to reconsider. We haven't voted to
Okay,
reconsider yet.
so we made a motion to reconsider, assuming that gets
Passed.
passed, we would vote.
We would
Assuming
vote-
then the next motion is made to
Refer back to committee.
committee. If something changed, which I don't think we foresee between now and town meeting, we can reconsider this again at town meeting.
Correct.
If we need.
I mean, if for some reason the planning board decided to post a meeting tomorrow for 2 weeks from now, which would be before the second day of town meeting, they could hold a public hearing on the full language Tuesday night, and on Wednesday, we could vote a substitute motion.
Exactly.
So, there.
We've tried that.
Which is what we asked them to
Right.
do.
We
So,
asked
but
the chair to do
that one at
and
this
he
point
refused.
has not moved forward, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Can I just say on regards to the planning board, so I'm the vice chair of the planning board, and I just wanted to say that, so in the meeting, I was hoping to discuss this article. I also think it's an important article, and I wanted to have the public hearing, and I had lots of questions and comments, and I wanted to engage and make it a better article. The chairman had said that what was posted is what we have to have the public hearing on. And I have to agree with him. I mean, public hearing is there so the public can hear about it, can ask questions, can get information. And the actual text of Article 14, which we got, and probably a lot of you got, the public didn't get. So I really feel that it was the right move for the chairman to do that. It was disappointing, yeah, but the point is for the planning board to hold a public hearing, and if the public didn't have the text, I think that's the right thing to do. You know, and I think there was some good input from planning board members. That's it. So I mean, it's disappointing, it's maybe frustrating, but I think, I mean, I don't want anyone to think that the planning board acted improperly, because I think what we did was the right thing, and it's the right thing for the town and the right thing for the public.
Yes, Kathleen.
Through you to Sarah. Can you comment then on why there's no possibility of hosting the meeting now, having it the night before the second day of town meeting?
I asked that in the meeting, but the text has to be posted in the newspaper, I believe, right?
So just to clarify, this, yes, the procedure, I mentioned this earlier, the Department of Housing and Community Development has this guideline, section D4, adopting and amending zoning bylaws, where they tell you exactly what you have to do. And then that Form 7 is what Liz Gaffney, this town clerk, will have to sign off on. Part of that includes a 14-day notice. Part of the 14-day notice is that you must publish in local newspapers in 2 subsequent weeks. You have to also notify abutting towns. You have to and you have to present this documents when you file your zoning bylaw change. The question that prevented the chair, or the reasoning the chair gave for not wanting to call a public hearing, was that the chair demanded that the Board of Selectmen, who's sponsoring this article, have a meeting, reopen the warrant, submit the new text, the 5-page bylaw, and then he would consider holding a public hearing. Well, we got town council's opinion on that Friday, and they disputed it completely. And they said, no, you have the text from Ben Barrett. You got it days ago. You're totally within your right to hold a public hearing. The
The issue of two local papers would make it difficult to get it done if we only have 2 nights of town meeting, because the public paper is published on Thursday. So that's the
Yeah,
issue
you
right
don't
now.
have the time.
Yeah, so,
Well, we have the time to have a public hearing, and we
Yeah.
requested that.
yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I want to be clear about that.
Okay. All righty. So we have a motion to reconsider Article 14. It's been seconded. All in favor of reconsideration, say aye.
Can you walk through procedure again?
Okay,
here?
sure. Right now, the motion that's out there is recommendation at town meeting. We are reconsidering that recommendation to come out with either a favorable action, no action, or refer back to committee vote. So right now, we're looking to reconsider just to bring it back on the table for a new motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained, 15-0-0.
Move to refer to committee?
By
Back to
Susan?
committee?
Okay.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Denny? Okay. All in favor of referring back to committee, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained?
Opposed?
Four-
One
s-
opposed?
Lisa.
I'm opposed.
Just Lisa. Okay. 14.
Article 15?
Can I just ask
To reconsider?
Yes,
one question on this?
sure.
With regards to the town meeting, if it's a timing issue, can the town meeting meet on the 21st and then just delay itself until November 2nd? And this be an outstanding, can you do that with a town meeting or the dates?
No, the dates are consecutive Mondays and Wednesdays until you complete all action. And people won't hang around to show up every Monday and Wednesday and expect a quorum,
Mhm.
just to make the timeline work.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Move to reconsider Article 15?
Second.
Susan, seconded by Denny, to reconsider. All in favor of reconsideration, say aye. Opposed, abstained, 15-0-0.
Move to return Article 15 to committee?
By Susan,
Second.
seconded by Denny. Regretfully, yes. All in favor of referring back to committee, say aye. Opposed, abstained, 14-0-1, Lisa's.
No.
Oppose or abstain?
No, opposed, I
14-1-0.
opposed.
Yeah, sorry,
Sorry.
14-1-0, sorry, 14-1-0. Lisa opposed. All right, so we've addressed all the articles, and we have 2 sets of meeting minutes to quickly review.
I think so, yes. Yeah, I'm very optimistic.
All the changes, right? Meeting minutes of September 5th. I didn't have anything for it. I didn't have any issues with Fit 5, so we should be good shape. I did not. Any modifications to September 5th minutes?
Accept the minutes as they are.
Motion. Moved to accept by Josette, seconded by Denny.
I'm just laughing at the wording. Mr. Maraski spoke to feeling that this proposal is legal. You want it?
Which one on the 50?
I got 2 copies.
Yeah. Ah, you loaded.
Being no modifications, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? 15-0-0 to accept. September 16th. On the second page, Article 7, third line down at the very right-hand side. I'm assuming it's supposed to be spoke to the article, it just says spoke O. Article 7?
He
Yeah.
spoke of.
Or spoke of? Okay. Or on behalf of? Yeah.
I'm good.
He's gonna go in the recycle bin in order, so. I'd save everything, but I need electronic.
And on the third page, I think it's, I think it's still on Article 14. We have the sentence beginning "and." I don't know if it's just supposed to be the people's names or
What is it?
where you have the people speaking to the article. You started off with "and." I wasn't sure if that was supposed to be there. Any other modifications? Denny?
Motion to accept the minutes as amended?
Second?
Motion by Denny, seconded by Susan. No other modifications. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 15-0-0 to accept. A week from Thursday, October 17th is our public hearing
At the COA.
at the, at the
Oh,
South Street
COA,
Center.
okay.
South Street Center, yep. We have a regular meeting beginning at 7. The public hearing is at 7:30. And we'll be voting potentially 2 articles after the public hearing. Any other questions?
Just to clarify, those articles are 12 and 18?
Yes. Related to the water articles, yep.
Meeting 7:30 here.
And then when the meeting's, when the hearing is done, we kick everybody out and we vote potentially on those 2 articles.
There's also going to be another program going on upstairs,
Okay?
so I would recommend
Get there
getting
early.
there, yes.
Yeah, okay,
Get
for
it
parking
there early
purposes?
for
Okay.
parking. There's
Yeah.
overflow across the street.
Mhm.
What about next door? Is there any overflow next door?
I don't know, if you want to check it out, Jeff, then I guess.
What program is going on? Is it-
Oh, my house.
Your house.
Yeah,
no, your house. No.
There's extra room in that driveway.
The other item is, if need be, we do have a room reserved for the 2 nights, the first 2 nights of town meeting.
Yeah.
There's a handout in your package.
2131.
Yep. So if we need that, we will meet there between 6 and 7 to take up any additional action, yes.
Do you know if we're starting the first night of town meeting at 7 again?
Yes,
We are?
yes.
Okay.
It's 7.
I will
Alrighty.
mark my calendar.
There being no other business before us, Denny?
To adjourn?
Motion to adjourn by Denny, seconded by Susan. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained.
There, Andrew,
Thank
you're
you very
in
much for your time.